Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 493 of Ink in Your Veins. I'm Rachael Herron. I'm so pleased that you are here with me today as we are talking to Elizabeth Becker about having a different creative outlet, not just writing, and also about writing human truths and the importance of having a second set of eyes on your work at the right time. Emphasis on at the right time. That is coming up. You're going to love the interview. And what's been going on around here? Oh my God, so much. I'm home. I'm back at the desk. I am home from the Philippines. I was there for almost 2 weeks and it was marvelous. It was really hot, really hot. But I have to say, by the end, I was almost acclimatized. I would choose to go outside the mildly air conditioned Airbnb I was staying in. It wasn't very cold, but yeah, no place I stayed had great air conditioning except the very first very fancy hotel in Manila when I was at the medical conference. So I have hereditary angioedema type 3. Hereditary angioedema, as I said, I believe is very, very rare. And I have, of course, the rarest type, which is statistically irrelevant when they look at the types of HAE. Type 1 is about 85% of the people, type 2 is about 15% of the people, and type 3s are 0.000 hearts of the people. So we are harder to treat. There's a lot less known about us and what works to treat us. And I met a type 3 woman there. I was saying to somebody, like, well, I'm type 3. I would say that hopefully everywhere, to everybody I met at the conference who had the disease. And she spun around in her chair. She says, "You're type 3?" And we'd been looking for each other. So that was marvelous to meet her. And so what HAE is, basically it makes my blood vessels leaky. I heard somebody say that. It's a much simpler way of explaining what I've been trying to explain for years. But I'm lacking a protein that my gene is broken in a way that lacks a protein to stop swelling. So what happens in cases of stress or trauma, if I, drop a book on my face, for example, which has happened and set off a trauma, when a swell starts, it doesn't stop. There's no stopping. There's no instructions in my body to stop a swell. So, if my lip starts to swell, the whole face swells. If you're most dangerously, if the larynx swells, many people die. It was, and before there was medicine for this and before there was a little bit of knowledge, it was 30% fatal when you got a laryngeal swell because it's not an allergy. You can't give allergy meds, but people give you a lot of allergy meds because it looks like an allergy and most people think they're having an allergic reaction. And that can happen in many, many places in the body, but the most dangerous, of course, is in the larynx. So I'm at this conference with all of these people who have this disease. And I understand representation. I understand that it matters. And I did not know I needed representation in this particular instance. I talked to so many amazing people about what it was like getting diagnosed and it took me 22 years to get diagnosed, and how difficult it was and has been. And we all feel the same things at the same times. And it was such a joyful experience. And I figured out why the hell they do these conferences. Here it is. Studies show they showed us some studies. I was putting all of this together in my head. Nobody actually came out and said this, but this is what I think. Studies show that when patients get together and form advocacy groups and start talking about any rare disease, the money follows. Patients then advocate for getting the medical treatments that exist for any rare disease, but right now we're talking about HAE, getting them funded by their government so that the costs for the medicine to treat it is reimbursable. Of course, that doesn't apply in the United States because health insurance, et cetera. I just think it's harder there. But in most other countries, treatment, when it is approved by a government, is then reimbursable and then the patients get it. This was an Australasia conference, and so we had a lot of East Asian countries, 17 of whom have no treatment in their countries yet. They have not been approved to be brought in. But when patients get together, and patients had come from all over, Sri Lanka, Nepal, China, Indonesia, Malaysia, I know those things are all kind of together, Korea, everyone, and Australia and New Zealand. And these were patients getting together and talking. And then they will go back to their countries and start lobby for their government to get these drugs in these life-saving drugs, both prophylactic and emergency basis medicines. And then the pharmaceutical companies who are put at five different pharmaceutical companies paid for this conference and, brought people in. We were staying at the best hotel that I've ever stayed at, the Sheraton in Manila. It was so luxe. The breakfast buffet, I just want to eat that for the rest of my life. I wouldn't eat dinner the night before so that I could eat more breakfast. It was not a buffet like a Vegas buffet. It was like a full-blown restaurant with all of these different I want to say genres of food. You know what I'm talking about. And it was always so good. It was so good. It was so good. I just ate and ate and ate. Anyway, the pharmaceutical companies pay for this. And I kept thinking, where's the money? Where's the money? Why are we here? Why am I here? Why did I get to come here? For HAE, which is a rare disease that has limited knowledge, they reckon they've only diagnosed, I think it was 700 people in the country of India so far. 700 people they have diagnosed. It's about a 1 in 50,000 rate of people who have HAE type 1 or type 2. So think about how many more, what is that, hundreds of thousands of people actually have HAE and just don't know it. Oh my gosh. And people have these terrible stories about being diagnosed, but it is a genetic disease. In most cases, it can anomalously, spontaneously occur in a person, but usually it's genetic. And everybody will talk about, oh yeah, cousin Diane died in her sleep. Oh yeah, dad died in his sleep. They're not dying in their sleep, they're dying of a laryngeal swell. But people talk, they start talking to their governments, and then the pharmaceutical companies get to come in and charge the government huge amounts of money for these incredible drugs that really work to save lives. That's where the money is. The more people talk, advocate, get the medicines approved, and then diagnose more people in families, the more money they make. That's where the money is. And I approve of all of it. I approve of all of it. I just wish that everybody could be funded and governmental reimbursement for these medications. Because the shot that I take is, and I can't even say this, is $30,000 a shot. That's what it costs. I was never approved by my insurance in the United States to get a shot of Firazyr. Couldn't get it. Couldn't afford it. Well, I couldn't have gotten it. Like the insurance company wouldn't even talk about what a copay on that would be. Some people do have it in the United States, of course, but I could never, ever get that approval. Here, they just give it to me. I pay $5. I pay the $5 copay that everybody in the country pays for medicine. And it makes me I'm getting to a point here, I promise. It makes me incredibly guilty to be able to have this drug, this life-saving drug. I reassure myself by telling myself that in the 4 years that I've lived in New Zealand, I have had to use one shot. Basically, when I get a swell, if it's in like my hands or someplace else, who cares? Whatever. So it's painful. It'll go down in 2 days. It takes about 48 hours, 48 to 72 hours to go away. But if it is in the face, these swells travel. So if it's in a lip, it can go frequently into the palate of the mouth, the soft palate of the mouth, and then into the throat. It takes hours and hours to travel, but you can feel it traveling. And once the swell really starts is when it's hard to turn off that reaction. Sidebar, this is what my migraines are. And I have a pill form of a drug, which is much, much cheaper. It's an old medication. It's probably cents to make. And that drug has been treating my migraines. It stops the swells in my brain. So fantastic. But I haven't got a scary, potentially life-threatening lip swell or facial swell in a couple of years. And I got one in the Manila airport about an hour before I was going to board the plane for an 8-hour flight to Sydney. And for those 8 hours, we'd be over water and there'd be no place to put down if it went to my larynx. I had one shot with me. It's expired. I haven't even gotten them refilled for 2 years because I don't need them, but you can use them when they're expired. Don't tell anybody, but we can. And so I used it and my hands were shaking. I went into the shower room to do it. The only other time I've ever gotten that shot since I moved here, Lala helped me with it because it's one of those like terrifying, get the air out of the tip of the needle. Sorry if you're shot phobic. But I gave myself the shot in the shower room. And I immediately started to feel the relief. The swelling stopped. And then I was scared though, because some people need 2 shots. And I was going to be in the air, and I was like, should I not fly? Should I not go on this? Should I cancel this flight and go tomorrow, which would be such a pain in the arse? But what I did was I asked, hello, Junebug, please be quiet. I asked the Qantas Air group at the front. We were getting ready, it was about an hour from boarding, if I could get my suitcase out from underneath the hold where they had already put it away into the plane because I had two more shots in there, two more expired shots. And I didn't think that they would do that. I thought they would say, your luggage is on board, you can't have it. But they got it. They got a whole team together, got my luggage off. I also thought they would say, you're having this weird medical reaction. You're not getting on our plane. Instead, they gave me they brought me my suitcase. They got me my shots. They let me board first because I'd already cleared everything in order to touch my suitcase. And they were fantastic. I did not need a second shot. I did not get a laryngeal swell. And in fact, I was also getting a migraine as soon as the lip started to swell. So it treated both of those things, treated both swellings in my head. And this happened because I went to the HAE conference and they said very clearly so many times from the stage, and these were not the pharmaceutical companies talking, these were the doctors, including my brilliant doctor was there. She said, take the medicine as soon as you feel it. Take the medicine as soon as you feel it. It is life-saving, and it is so much easier to stop a swell early than it is late when the system is out of control. And I was so proud of myself for taking that shot. Also, it made me feel better that it was technically an expired and I should have just thrown it away. So it didn't feel like wasting $30,000, but it does feel like coming from America where medicine is so hard to get and there's so much guilt around who is worthy of what that I still don't feel worthy of this medicine. But now I do after going to this conference. I feel grateful and empowered and so lucky to be alive. I've had two throat swells in the past, which I did not treat, which were incredibly scary. I didn't treat because I didn't have any medicine. They happen in the States. And it was so fun to go to this conference and I met people. And like I said, there was this whole family. There were 15 of them there. It was like a family reunion for them because 15 of them have HAE. It's genetic. They've all been tested and found to have it. And so they were all there. And then a bunch of them went to the same island I did, Boracay, on the same day that I did, the day after the conference. And then we all came back on the same day. So we were on the island the whole time together, although I never actually ran into them. But then on the penultimate day, they invited me to go boating with them. We did this island hopping cruise on this beautiful outrigger. It was the six of us and the four crew members, and we explored this really weird island, and then we went snorkeling in two different spots, and we watched the sunset. And I was with this whole entire delightful, incredibly delightful family. Actually, we went out for dinner the night before that too. Just hanging out with people who were like me and who have had the same struggles. It was great. It was great. And maybe that is why we writers love to hang around each other. And I know that that's true. We need to hang out around the people who face the same struggles we do. And you have spent a lot of time, sorry, just listening to me talk about a medical condition to get to the point that it is crucial that we have other writing friends who speak the same language, who go through the same trauma and pain and joy and elation and depression that we do, that we can speak about this together. And I will share that while I was on, so for 6 days, I was on Boracay and this amazing little resort. It was the cheap resort. My friends who were also on the island stayed at the Movenpick, which was amazing. My place was merely a hotel on the beach, and it was fabulous. And I spent so much time lying in a lounge chair on the beach, looking at the water, drinking pineapple slushies. And I had given myself permission not to write if I didn't want to write. I was just going to kind of follow my heart. And I read like three books, three novels, and I have read most of this new book by Kara Loewentheil called Take Back Your Brain. And she's a person I really respect. She's a thought work coach, which sounds really woo-woo, but she's this feminist brainiac who really knows what she's talking about. So she's written this book, Take Back Your Brain, and it's all about using thought work, changing your thoughts in order to change emotions, in order to change the actions, in order to change what we reap from the actions that we sow. It all begins with a thought, and you can change your thoughts. This is based on, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's all scientific, it's all tested. And she talks about this in the book. So I just kind of started playing with thought work around writing this book that I'm writing. And I'm not having trouble working on the book, and I didn't make myself go there to work on the book. But I was definitely in this space where, like, nah, I'm just chilling. I am inputting right now. I'm doing input. I'm not doing output. I'm just going to do this. But I started doing thought work on this book, and I am going to make this into a little presentation or workshop or webinar because it was incredible. I started doing this thought work and changing my thoughts from, oh, I don't know enough yet to write, to basically, I'm going to have a sneeze. Excuse me, that happened off camera. Changing my thoughts from I don't know enough yet to write this book, to sit down and really write this book, to I know enough and I'm so excited. I can't help but write this book. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I did all this. I basically used her methodology and changed it into a writing methodology and tried it on myself. Girl, I was writing on the beach because I couldn't help it. Because I was so excited about what I was thinking about. This one character who I hadn't even really been thinking about at all before was just pouring out of me. And I was writing on the beach on my beautiful Remarkable, which does not like to get hot, by the way. The Remarkable got as hot as I did. Didn't like it and kept warning me. But it did not die. It did great. And so I'm there, sitting there typing on the beach, which is not something I actually wanted to do. I felt like kind of a tool sitting in a lounge chair typing. But I couldn't help it because this thought work worked so well. So I am going to be sharing that, and I will let you know how where that is going to be. It'll probably be over in Ink Village, and maybe other places. Um, Speaking of Ink Village, it's been so fun. I'm so happy to be over there. If you have not checked out Ink Village, you can just go to rachelherron.com/Ink Village. I think that's what it's under. Let me check. I might be wrong. Yep, that is where it is. rachelherron.com/Ink Village. We're over in Slack. I am starting to, I had to wait until I got back to start the private podcast just for them, but I'm going to be working on that today to get that out to them. And that will be mostly weekly as we go forward. And we're writing together in the writing guild sessions, and it's awesome. And I would love to have you if you want to join. And please do not let price be an option. There is an option at the bottom. If you cannot afford the price, you can hit the little button that says, I can't afford that. Here's what I can't afford. So that's on there. Um, okay, so I'm back. I'm home. I'm working. I'm super jet lagged. I slept until 9:30 this morning, which for me, sometimes I'll sleep until like 7. This morning I slept in until I was late for work because I like to be at the desk by 9. And I guess I needed it. So that's great. Yeah, that's all. I think I've waffled on long enough. Let's get into the interview. And here is Elizabeth's bio. Elizabeth Becker is a former pediatric nurse and Pushcart Prize nominated writer. She has worked as a correspondent for Richmond Magazine and the Richmond Times-Dispatch, and her award-winning essays have been featured on national sites including Motherwell, Scary, Mommy, and Winning Writers. She received a degree in creative writing from the College of Charleston before earning a bachelor's degree in nursing. She lives in Charlottesville, Virginia, with her husband and 4 young children. The Healers is her debut novel. Please enjoy this interview. I know that you will. Get some of your own writing done. Tell me about it. And here we go. I could not be more pleased to welcome you to the show. Will you please share your name and pronouns with us?
Yes, so my name is Elizabeth Becker, also go by Liz, and pronouns she and her.
Thank you very much. I'm so excited to talk to you because as we are recording on January 30th, this probably won't go out for a few weeks, but by then your debut novel will be out and
Yes.
about. And I really love to talk to debut novelists right now at this point. How are you feeling?
I'm excited. I'm nervous, sort of feeling all of the things.
Yeah.
It's a very long process, so it's kind of crazy that it's finally, we're within 2 weeks of pub day, which is very crazy, very exciting.
When did you start thinking of or dreaming about this book?
Gosh, so this was I think I started writing it in like 2020.
Hmm.
Think, or yeah, that's pretty like that's when I talked to my agent about it and sort of had the idea, and things started percolating. And I think started to go out on submission maybe 2022. And then that was
Awesome.
its own long process. So
So,
it's a while.
so you were agented before you wrote this book. Is there another book that agent had taken out, or what's your history
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, so I had met her actually at a writers conference in Richmond, and it was sort of a deal where you had like 10 minutes, I think, you could pitch an agent. They had a bunch of agents there. And I had been writing mostly nonfiction at that point, a lot of essays, and I'd had the idea to do like a linked essay collection, which is what I pitched her about my work as a nurse, because I was a nurse before. And she really loved the idea. And so we worked on that for a while. And yeah, she tried to sell that book. That did not work out very well because it was hard. I think essays are hard, especially
Essays
about
are hard.
nursing. Especially, I think that was going out in submission like right as the pandemic was
Mm.
going on and starting. And so just the timing was not ideal. But it was nice that I already had her, so she was willing to stay with me after that and work with me on the novel.
That's awesome. And I love hearing that you met her at a conference and this is where that connection was made and this is why you're together now and this is why your book is going out. And that is
Yeah.
super, super exciting. Those kind of connections work. How are you planning on celebrating the release of the book?
So we're going to do a couple things. We're going to do sort of two launches, one in Richmond, Virginia, where I'm from originally, because that's where most of my family are. Most of my older friends are there. So there's a bookstore there, a fountain bookstore that we're going to do a little launch event, a celebration at, and then a couple weeks later, we're going to do one in Charlottesville, where I'm currently living.
That is awesome. How are you feeling about them? Are you a person who gets nervous about those things or are you just excited?
I'm like waiting for the nerves to kick in because I have not just in life done a lot of like public speaking. Like, so that whole thing is pretty new. I'm, introverted like most writers
Mm-hmm.
are. So I'm waiting for the nerves. So far, I've mostly just felt excitement. I think because it's just so new that I don't really like know what to be nervous about yet because it's all, I've never experienced anything like it. I've never, been an author being featured at an author event. So I'm sure the nerves will come, but right now, just mostly very excited.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm thinking back on mine. I think that my nerves came after my first one, but my first one was
Okay.
just pure excitement. And I would encourage you just to let yourself enjoy every single
Yes.
minute of
Trying
it.
to lean into that, not to overthink it, just
Yeah.
to, and it's nice because I don't know what your event was like, but the ones that I'm doing, they're all with other authors,
Oh,
which is very
perfect.
helpful for me because it's not just like me on a stage, it's more of a conversation,
Yes. That
which
is
I think,
the ideal way to do it. That's the way we all should do it, I think. It makes it
yeah,
so much easier.
yeah,
All right,
you're not
let's
there
talk a little
alone.
bit about your process.
Okay.
How and when and where, how do you get your writing done?
So I do not have a very rigid process at the moment, just because life, I have four kids and my youngest is one.
Oh,
So
wow, that's a baby. You have a baby.
yes, yes. So especially right now, because she's home, I'm home with her and she's home during the day. So I can't really dedicate certain hours. I wish I could. I kind of squeeze it in where I can. If I get a babysitter, if my husband is off, sometimes his hours are a little flexible. If I, in a dream world, I would definitely work in the morning. That's definitely, I feel like I'm much more creative, much more energetic. I tend to, after lunch, kind of drop off a cliff a little bit
Mhm.
with energy. But again, I've had times, especially when I was doing like revisions where I had to get stuff done, where I had to work after the kids went to bed, had to get that, cup of coffee later in the day and just kind of, fit in work where I could.
Is there a piece of advice that you would give people who don't have much time like you do, especially the mothers who are listening, who are like, I want to do this, but I just feel like I have nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the best advice I can offer is just to like be flexible, be willing to sort of, not have your dream. Like I'm going to sit down at a nice desk and I'm going to have everything silent and quiet. Like you might, I did a lot of writing for this book actually in my car when after preschool drop off because if I wanted to go home, I'd have to give up like an hour. We live kind of far from the preschool, so I was like, I'm just going to stay here. It's quiet in my car
Perfect.
and did that and actually worked out pretty well. So I would say just definitely be willing to think a little outside of the box, and it might not be like Instagram perfect and look really nice, but the most important thing is that you just write and find somewhere you can do it no matter where it
And
is.
it's so nice to tuck it into any edges of commutes to
Yes.
anything that we have to go to. Like if you can get there 20 minutes early, great. Steal those 20 minutes.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, just
I love that.
bring your laptop with you if you can, even if you don't think you might, have enough time because you might at least get that little window in there to
Mhm.
get some work done.
And you're living proof. All right, what
Mhm.
is the most exciting thing that you've ever realized about your writing process?
So I would definitely say what like after meeting my agent, just seeing what a difference having a second set of eyes
Mm,
on writing, what that can do, which seems very obvious, but I guess so much of my writing before that was I wrote like a lot of freelance, journalism. I did a lot of
mhm.
essays. So there really was not like a heavy editing process. Like sometimes there'd be a little bit with the magazines or newspapers, but it was mostly just like line edits. It wasn't really
Right.
content. Um, and so, I think it definitely takes a little bit to get used to that, to be like, oh, wait, like this is mine, like, but this person has, a say in what's good, what's not good, and they're probably right. And I kind of have to like put my pride aside and be like, I can't do this totally on my own. Being willing to listen to someone else who is more experienced, who has seen, a lot of authors go through similar stages. And so, working with her, because I did a lot of edits with my agent, but then also, especially when it got to the point where I was doing, real revisions and edits with my editor, that also was, it totally, I guess, changed the way I saw writing, is that it doesn't have to be perfect on the first draft. It's not going to be complete. It's going to change a lot more than probably, I ever thought it would. And
Mhm.
that's a good thing. It's going to get better.
That is
And that,
such a good thing, isn't it? Like the
yeah.
things, and when we send our final draft, which is our like, whatever, 15th draft to our agent
Mhm.
or to the editor, we can't imagine that it will change much. And then it can, and it
Yes.
should, because it
Yes,
does make it better.
exactly. Yes. And yeah, some of those changes can be hard and take a while, to accept. But then
Yeah.
once you sort of get past, again, with me, it was sort of getting past my own pride, getting past sort of like, I know best, and being like, oh, actually, I need to listen and take in what they're saying because they probably have a point, because they also want it to be the best book it can be. They want it to be successful.
My editors over my history have been about 98% right. Maybe 99% right most of the time.
Yes.
And I would say 80% of the time when they first say it to me, I'm like, no, no, this time they're
Yes.
wrong. And then a day later, you're like, okay, but this part could be right. And the next day, oh man, okay, they're right.
Yes, I feel like I would always have to, like my agent, I think at some point told me, like, just take some time, like, don't respond right away, like,
Yes,
give it a couple days, because your
super
initial reaction
important.
is probably going to be like, no, I don't want to change that. But then as soon as you, give it a little bit of time, you probably will realize that it's the way to go.
Yeah, and we're not reacting thinking about our pride. We're not saying, "Oh, my feelings are hurt, my pride is hurt." My brain just says, "This is wrong and this is why.
Mhm.
I know it has
Yeah,
to be this way because of this." So I
yeah,
have to give myself that space to open my mind a little bit more.
yeah, definitely.
Not easy. What speaking of not easy, what part of writing do you struggle with most?
So definitely, I would say, I'm between like the plotter and the pantser. I'm the more of the pantser, so I struggle a little
Me
bit
too.
with yeah, the planning, the outlining. Even if I have, again, right now, timing wise, I don't do a lot of that because I feel like I'd prefer to use any time I do have on actually just writing.
Mhm.
But again, even if I had, I think all the time in the world, that's something that I would still struggle with, because I tend to just want to start and see where it goes. But I think it is important. And after going through the first book and realizing the process, it made me want to be a little more careful, like not totally change my style, but there is a place, I think, for at least some structure, some loose outlining, because I think it can save you a lot of time in the long run if
I
you
think
start out with sort of a good foundation.
I think you are right, and I also kind of hate that.
Yes, I know. I'm very resistant to it, but I feel like I'm trying to do it a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay, so what are you really good at writing wise?
Um, so I guess, I'm one thing that a college professor actually pointed out, and like a couple people have said it along the way. So I feel like it's not something I necessarily would have thought about myself, but I guess people respond to it. It's just like finding sort of very simple, sort of human truths and writing about them in a way that makes sense, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. Um, I think just these little minutia, relationships and experiences and finding a way to sort of write about it with clarity and to make it, compelling and to resonate with a lot of readers. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that correctly, but
Is this something that you do naturally on a first draft, or is it something that you work in more later in revision?
I think that's sort of I definitely I think that's sort of what I start with. Like I think as a writer, I sort of that sort of builds the book almost like this universal human truth or experience or theme, I guess you could call it.
Hmm.
And then it sort of the story branches out from there. Which again, I didn't even realize sort of I was doing that, but I think that's tends to be how I write. And what I start with is observing something in my life or in someone else's life, and then trying to take that, start from that place of truth and then build a story around it.
I think that's a superpower. And many of us, I think, reverse engineer our books. We're like, we write the book and then we say, what can we hone the book with? What theme is
Mm.
already here that I need to polish and shine? And it sounds like you're more aware of it earlier than most.
Yeah, and I guess the downside is I think sometimes it could be easier to start with more of like the plot or the story and then kind of hone in on a theme because that's sort of makes sense in a lot of ways to write that way. Whereas I feel like, yeah, I sort of do it almost backwards, I guess,
I don't
and
know.
go from
It sounds like a pretty forwards way for someone to write. So in your next book that I'm assuming you're working on, have you started with that idea,
yeah,
that theme? Yeah.
yeah. So that one, like I tell people, I feel like this book not in a depressing way, I hope, but it's about death and how we die. And the next book is about grief, which also
Mm.
definitely not in a depressing way, and
Hmm.
ultimately finding, hopeful things about those
I
topics.
love
But
that. Those are two of my favorite topics. So fantastic.
a rich
Awesome.
topic, lots to write about.
What is the kindest thing that you've ever done for yourself as a writer?
Um, so I would say when I've experienced, failure or rejection or, things have not gone the way that I wanted, the kindest thing that I've done is allowing myself to take a step back, not to stop, but to pause and to sort of focus my energy on something that is much more straightforward and fulfilling and still creative. Like I'd say, like I went through a very intense gardening phase. I think right
Mm.
around the time the first book didn't work out, or when I was waiting to hear, if it would work out. And I think for me, yeah, that's sort of what I need sometimes when I'm struggling or when things aren't going well is to not, again, not to stop writing, but just to at least find something that I can sort of channel that creative energy into for a while that is not dependent on other people, that, I can do on my own, find my own happiness, very simple, and still gets kind of some creative energy out.
That sounds so healthy and well balanced. It
Yes.
it really does. I am impressed.
Yeah. And it's just, I feel like for my mental state, I need that sometimes because it can be hard, as a writer, because you definitely do meet a lot of rejection. And I think I realized that that was going to keep happening. And that when it did, I sort of just needed to find those little outlets and other areas of life to kind of focus on.
There's no one in New York who will come to you and tell you that you did your garden wrong, you know? And if they did, you could kick them out of the yard.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
I love
Yes.
that. Um, will you please tell us about a specific moment that you knew you had ink in your veins?
Um, so I'd say like I guess it's specific, but also a repeated kind of specific moment is just the fact that I kept coming back to writing throughout my life, even though I would sort of stray into other paths. After college, I did not go into anything writing related. I went into nursing school, partly because I had tried briefly to kind of get a writing job. It didn't work. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to do something totally different. Like I'm done with writing. And then it just kind of kept finding its way back in. Like I started doing more like freelance journalism in Richmond just because it was easy. Like I did theater reviews and things I never would have kind of thought I would do. And then, I stopped for a while once I got the nursing job. But then I ended up writing, when I had kids, I started writing a lot about parenting. And it just kept finding its way, I guess, back to me, even if I kept being like, no, this career is too hard. I don't want this. But it just would, you know, resurface in whatever area of life I had gone into.
I love that. You would set it aside and it would just walk back on stage. Here I
Yeah,
am.
pretty much. Yes.
Oh, and here it is with your book just about to come out or out
Yes.
as people are listening. That's
Yes.
that's beautiful. What is the best book that you've read recently and why did you love it?
So I just one of my ones I just finished was it's called I'm sure I say it right in the Hour of Crows by Dana Elmendorf, who actually had blurbed me. I had not met her before, and I just read the book and finished it and loved it. And it has a lot of similarities to my book. It
Mm,
has it's there's a healing aspect. There's sort of a magical realism aspect. It's Appalachia, although hers is much more Appalachia, I'd say, is like a much larger character because it's more about, old folk medicine and granny healing. And,
mhm,
but it's very atmospheric. Like it has this wonderful setting, very sort of Southern Gothic, a
mhm.
little bit creepy, but just, I don't love scary books. So I'd say like kind of right in the middle, really strong female character. I loved it. I thought it was beautiful.
That sounds wonderful. And the title In the Hour of Crows, that is a beautiful title.
Yes, it is beautiful. Yeah.
Speaking of other beautiful titles and books, will you please tell us about the Moonlight Healers? Can you give us a little bit about it?
Yes. So The Moonlight Healers is a book about one family who has a magical healing ability. And it's about how that ability sort of shows itself in different generations. It follows two protagonists, one in 1942 France during World War II, who is a wartime nurse, and then the modern day protagonist, who is in Crozet, Virginia, out in the mountains, who is this isn't really a spoiler, but at the beginning of the book, the first chapter, she is in a car accident with her best friend and brings him back to life. And has no idea how she did it. And that sort of launches her on this path to discover, where that came from, who her family is. And then as the book goes on, you see both of those women, their journeys, and how they learn what healing means, what this ability means in their life as it relates to life and death and sort of everything in between.
Mm. And then I can hear that pivotal theme that you've got in there that you are
Yes.
writing toward and around and with.
Yes,
So
definitely.
awesome. Awesome. Where can we find you out on the internet?
So mostly just Instagram these
Mhm.
days. I have Elizabeth Becker books. I kind of gave up a little bit on Facebook. I'm on there, but I don't really do much on it. So I'd say Instagram is my main social media these days.
Perfect. Thank you so
Very
much for being
simple.
here.
So of course.
And oh, I'm sorry, what was the last part?
Oh, just yeah, just very simple. Just one social media.
That's very nice. That's actually a very strong and sturdy way to do it, I think.
Mhm.
Let's see what I was going to say. And by the time this comes out, you will have already been selling your books, and I wish that it flies from the shelves.
Thank you so
Good luck to
much.
you. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.